Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. This is a B1 level civics and citizenship lesson, and today we're going to be talking about amendments. So how is today different from 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago? And what does it mean to amend something? So amend just means to change. And can you think of an example in everyday life? And here they have someone erasing something. If you make a mistake, you erase it and change it. And why might it be important to amend the U.S. Constitution? Well, the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The Bill of Rights explains and protects people's liberties and makes sure that the federal government doesn't have too much power. The First Amendment protects freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. So see if you can match each of the words with the image that best describes it. So picture A would be freedom of assembly. Picture B, I think, would be freedom of speech. Picture C would be freedom of the press. Picture D would be freedom of religion. And picture E is the right to petition the government. So we're going to read the short descriptions of other amendments in the Bill of Rights and match each amendment with its meaning. So this means that the government cannot search a person's things unless they have a good reason and a judge says it's okay. So that would match with the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures and requires warrants based on probable cause. This allows people to say what they want, practice any religion, write in newspapers, gather in groups, and ask for change from the government. Well, that would be the First Amendment. Protects freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. This means that the government cannot force people to host soldiers in their home. That would be the Third Amendment. Prohibits the quartering of soldiers in private homes during peacetime. This lets people have guns to protect themselves and their homes. That's the Second Amendment. Ensures the right to bear arms. And this says that if a person is accused of a crime, they don't have to say anything and they can have a fair trial. It also says that you can't be accused of the same crime more than one time, and that's the Fifth Amendment. Guarantees different rights, including the right to remain silent, protection against double jeopardy, and the right to due process of law. This tells that we have more rights than just the ones listed in the Constitution. So that would be the Ninth Amendment, states that rights not mentioned in the Constitution are rights of the people. This says that in some big arguments, people can have a jury of regular people decide who is correct, who is right. That would be the Seventh Amendment provides for the right to a jury trial in certain civil cases. This gives people the right to have a fair and quick trial with a lawyer, and they can see and question the people who say they did something wrong. That's the Sixth Amendment. Ensures the right to a fair and speedy trial, the right to an attorney, and the right to confront witnesses. This means that the government can't punish people in a mean or unusual way and can't ask for a lot of money to let them go free. Well, that would be the Eighth Amendment. Prohibits cruel and unusual punishment and excessive bail. And this says that the states and people have powers that the government doesn't like, making some rules. This says that the states and people have powers that the government doesn't, like making some rules for their areas. And that would be the 10th Amendment. reserves powers not delegated to the federal government to the states or the people. All right, so some vocabulary here. So, a mean or strange way of punishing someone for a crime. That would be number 7, cruel and unusual punishment. Have soldiers stay in a person's house. That's number 3, to quarter soldiers. A trial in which regular people, not just a judge, decide if a person is guilty or innocent. That would be number 5, trial by jury. A large amount of money requested to get a person out of jail. That's number 6, excessive bail. Have weapons like guns. That's number 1, to bear arms. Being put on trial for the same crime more than once. That's number 8, double jeopardy. And a fair chance in court is, the act of looking through a person's things is number 2, search and seizure. And a fair chance in court is number 4, due process. So there are more amendments after the Bill of Rights. These amendments include the 13th Amendment, which stopped slavery, the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and the 22nd Amendment, which limited the president to 2 terms in office. So do you know how many amendments there are? So we're going to guess to see if these are true or false. The voting age was 21 in the 1960s. There are poll taxes in the U.S. Washington, D.C. is the only district that votes like a state. And people have always selected their senators. So just take a guess at those, and then we'll check. You'll have the opportunity later to see if your guesses were correct. So can you think of any recent times when people wanted to change the Constitution? Well, one of the most recent was probably the Equal Rights Amendment. It did not actually pass. It's still kind of out there to give women equal rights, in addition to the rights that are already guaranteed under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But that's probably the most recent change. How does the Constitution change in the United States? We'll talk about that later. Does your native country have a constitution? And if so, does it ever change? And can you name any important events or big changes that made the Constitution different in the U.S.? All right, in the past versus now, amendments are important because things are different now than they were in the past. In the past, slavery existed in the U.S. Now slavery doesn't exist in the U.S. So we use the past tense to talk about things that happened in the past, and to create the past tense of a regular verb, you add ed to the base form. In the past, Americans needed to be 21 years old to vote. Now the minimum voting age is 18 years old. The negative form is didn't plus the verb. In the past, the internet didn't exist. Now the internet is part of our everyday lives. Irregular past tense verbs don't follow the same pattern as regular verbs. In the past, women couldn't vote. Now women can vote. So can is the present tense, could is the past. Presidents were allowed to continue their terms forever. Now presidents are only allowed to serve 2 terms. So the to be verbs is, am, and are have the past forms of was and were. All right, so we're going to read about the 19th Amendment, and it says complete the text with verbs in the past tense, and the past tense of be is was or were. So in the early 20th century, women in the United States were not allowed to vote in federal elections. Many people thought that this was not fair. To change this, women joined together and started the women's suffrage movement. They wanted women to have the right to vote. To make this happen, they organized rallies and protests. Their hard work worked. In the year 1920, they added the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. This change gave women the right to vote. The 19th Amendment says women and men in the United States can vote, and no one can say no because of their gender. In American history, there's a strong tradition of peacefully changing leaders, but it wasn't always this way. George Washington, America's very first president, decided to stop being president after 2 terms. This decision showed everyone how things should work, and presidents continued to do this for a long time. But in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt did something different. He was president for a 3rd term during the Great Depression, and then he had a 4th term during World War II. It worried some people that Roosevelt was president for such a long time. They thought that one person having that much power for so long was not fair in a democracy. So in 1947, they suggested the 22nd Amendment. In 1951, it became a law. The change says no one can be president more than 2 times. Before the 26th Amendment was passed, the minimum voting age in most states was 21. However, in the 1960s, people began to ask for a change. Young people who could be drafted to fight in the Vietnam War argued that if they were old enough to serve in the military, they should also have the right to vote. In 1971, the government ratified the 26th Amendment and changed the national voting age to 18. The amendment reads, "The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied by the United States or by any state on account of age. And to serve in the military means to work as a soldier or a member of the armed forces." All right, so now they want you to create a sentence about the United States in the past. So today, people use high-speed trains and airplanes to travel a long distance. In the past, people traveled by car, on foot, or by horseback. It's really hard to see. Do this. So in the past, people traveled by car, on foot, there were stagecoaches for a while, by stagecoach, or on horseback. Okay, Today we get our news from online news websites and social media platforms. In the past, people got their news from newspapers, radio, and television. All people over the age of 18 can vote. Race and gender do not matter. In the past, only white men who owned land could vote. Today, we communicate with texts and emails. In the past, people communicated by telephone, telegraph, and mail. And women have the right to vote in the United States. Women did not have the right to vote before 1920. All right, so let's review. What is an amendment? Well, it's a change to the Constitution, or just a change to anything. Why are amendments important? Well, because things change in the country over time, and so the Constitution needs to be able to change as well. What is one freedom from the First Amendment? The right to freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, a number of others that we talked about. And how are things different now than they were in the past? That brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you have any questions, please leave those for me in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.